everyone, and welcome back to the Her Hoop Stats podcast. I'm Chelsea Leite, and I am joined today by Coach Helen Williams. So excited to hop on my first podcast with her as part of our new format here on the Her Hoop Stats podcast. So excited. We're going to dive into a few things from opening weekend. And of course, whatever we don't get, Jamie and Tyler are going to get you tomorrow. So if you think that we missed anything, don't worry. We have more fun stuff coming all week as we kind of transition into doing more podcasting. But so excited to be here with Coach. If you missed her episode with Jamie last week, make sure to go check that out after. But yeah, let's dive right into the weekend because I know we both watched the WNBA, and I know the first game we want to talk about is New York and Las Vegas. So I'll just throw it to you. You can get us started with, just kind of your thoughts on that game, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, it was, must-see appointment viewing. I had to make sure and see it live, and it didn't disappoint. Just a couple of things about that. First, as the game was starting, and obviously the Liberty did their ring ceremony before then, and in my mind, I'm thinking Asia Wilson must be seething in the locker room. And after the game, I'm sure she was too. But obviously, we see what happens when she's mad. She had a ton of points. But I just, from the Vegas standpoint, I felt like obviously defensively, they didn't have a good game, missed some assignments, backdoors, those kinds of things. That to me is an easy fix. Nothing that was so glaring that there wasn't something they could do to do a better job. I'm sure they'll look at film and, shore those things up. The offense I was a little bit more concerned with. I think, sometimes Vegas, they go away from Asia Wilson touching the basketball and they sort of dig themselves in holes. And then, they come back to her at the end of the game and go, hey, save us. And so I think she should touch the ball a lot. And I think, again, I don't think it's a very difficult fix, but when you give her the basketball in open space and allow her to do her, it just makes everything flow better. I don't think that Jewel Lloyd's going to shoot that bad, the whole season. She's just got to figure it out. And so I think those were the things that sort of, stood out to me about them, but mainly just lack of communication and just hard to get a rhythm, on offense in terms of in terms of the Vegas.
Yeah, the thing that stands out to me about what you're saying is, Asia Wilson had 31 points in that game, a ton of rebounds. She got a double-double, and we're still talking about her touching the basketball more. Like, that's just how important she is to the system, and that's just how, when you think about MVP, that's kind of, she defines it maybe better than anyone. But I agree with you. I was really surprised, of course, you can't judge Jewel Lloyd by her first game. But definitely want to see more from that. And I was really happy to see that Jackie Young was able to step up as that secondary offense for them. But you're right. It's a new kind of system, I guess, because they're switching out Jewel Lloyd for Kelsey, or they had Kelsey Plum. Now it's Jewel Lloyd. But I still think, a lot of what they're doing should be the same as years past. So I'm curious to see how they kind of turn that around. And they're going to a team like Connecticut now where it's not the level of, matchup as New York was. So, hopefully we'll be able to see a little bit of their adjustments from there. But yeah, and on the New York side, they just looked like a well-oiled machine, picking up right where they left off despite having a few new pieces. So what did you see on that side?
Yeah, I saw a pretty smooth offense. Now, again, some of that has to do with the lack of communication and missed assignments for Vegas. But I said last week that I think they probably have one of the best benches in the league in terms of their subs. And even though they lost the scoring battle, Vegas's bench outscored them 14-12. I thought that the Liberty bench outplayed the Vegas bench, if that makes sense. Obviously, with Thibich, with Johannes, Burns had a great game, and then Sabali. So I think their bench is solid in terms of contribution, and it's only going to get better. I have to say Now, my favorite player is Diana Taurasi, and she's retired. So I
Yeah.
have to pick new players that are
Yep.
my favorite players, and I can't just replace her with one. So I have to do two. So Kelsey Plum, and then also, Natasha Cloud. I thought had a phenomenal game for them. I thought she just fit in seamlessly.
Yeah.
Just the toughness, but also on both ends of the floor. She's able to contribute, and so they're only getting better. And she
Mhm.
comes in with championship pedigree. She's won a ring, so she kind of knows what it takes. So that's kind of what stood out to me. If you're
Yeah.
able to have a bench like that contribute, that means that your big three get rest, and that's scary when Ionescu and Stewart and Jones can get a breather, and you not see much drop off. It's kind of scary.
Yeah, exactly, and I mean, a big thing about Asia Wilson's season last year was the fact that she was playing upwards of almost 40 minutes a game too, so it's that
Yeah,
ability, like you just said, to rest that's really gonna come in clutch for New York, and I mean, when you think about Cloud, the, comparison that I wanna make is, like, when you're going out and trying to, like, make your fantasy team and you're, like, you're just looking for someone that fits right in, and I feel like Natasha Cloud, I mean, the GMs in the front office of New York have been saying they've been trying to get her for years, but just to get someone who not only fits, in what you need in a lineup, they needed a point guard, but also fits culturally. The fans love her. She loves the city. You can just tell that she's just like having a good time. I mean, chemistry is such a huge part of winning a championship. And I think her move is going to help them on the court, but also in the locker room too. So, I mean, it's exciting to see.
yeah, that's a good point. The locker room, I think, is really going to be where things that we don't see that are going to be beneficial to them because she's certainly a leader there, but she also, as we've seen with her podcast about Stewie's bags, likes to
Yeah,
have a good time, and so I think it's a good combination. And she is not one to mince words. She's going to say what she thinks needs to be said,
yep.
and people are going to listen because she doesn't ask anybody to do anything that she wouldn't do herself.
Exactly, yeah. I love the "What's bag did Stewie bring today?" And Stewie's kinda going back now and, like, trolling her by bringing Puma bags even though Natasha Cloud is a Nike athlete, so, I mean, that's all just happening on Instagram and fun stuff, so they're just a fun team to follow, but, I mean, let's switch gears now, let's talk a little bit about Dallas and Seattle last night. I know Jamie and Tyler are gonna talk about it a bit more, but, I mean, I'm curious on your thoughts because it ended up being a close game near the end. And, what did you see from Dallas specifically? Because we know Seattle's a team that, has a lot of talent, could get up there in terms of the standings, but Dallas, they're figuring it out, but they were close. And what stood out to you from that game?
Yeah, well, I will say both teams played a better second game than their first game,
Yeah.
for sure. And Dallas, I think, um, what stood out to me was Enrique didn't get a whole lot of shots. She's a volume shooter. She needs shots, but I think figuring out that coaching staff is going to have to figure out. Obviously, when she has the ball in her hands, I mean, when the clock's running down, that's who you want to have the ball in their hands. But if the ball's not going to be in her hands and it's going to be in Paige Becker's hands, then
Yeah.
how do you free Enrique? Like, what kinds of screens do you bring her off of? Do you do pick and roll so that people have to make a choice between her and Paige Becker's? Do you, let her set a screen for Paige and then get a flare screen to free her? Like, what kinds of things are you going to do to make sure that Enrique, if she doesn't have the ball in her hand, has the opportunity to get shots? I think that's really important. If they figure that out, then I think the person that's going to benefit the most from that is Maddie Siegrist, because somebody has to play once Paige or Enrique get to that second level. Somebody
Yep.
has to come off of somebody. So
Yep.
I think she's going to benefit. But I also think that I talked last week about Tierra McCowan,
Mhm.
and she had a better game. And what stands out to me about that is whenever a team has a huge player that's going to play center, like Euron from Seattle,
Yep.
she's going to be valuable, right? She's going to go in there and she's going to do what she does. She had a good game. She got some touches, got an opportunity to score. But the question is, if a team doesn't play that type of center, then it's going to be very difficult to play her because if it's 5 out, she's not leaving the paint to go defend anybody.
Yeah.
So that can work, but will she be willing to accept that? Because not every team has a Brittany Griner, a traditional post, if you will, that pretty much stays in the paint where she's, very valuable.
Yep.
Is she going to be willing to accept that? Right. In my opinion. But I thought they played much better last night than they did the first game. And I thought, Paige had a solid. She's a rookie. She had a solid game.
Yep.
I thought Seattle was much better, and they're still my sneaky team.
Yeah.
They're just gonna have to, they have their big three, obviously what's her name? Skylar Diggins had a good
Yeah.
game,
Yep.
right? Agu McKay had a good game,
Mhm. Oh, yeah,
and
great
then
game.
also Gabby Williams had a great game, right? So if you can get a little bit of more offense from um, McGregor,
Mhm.
right, and then figure out, the rookie like Belonga. She looked like a rookie. She wasn't
Yeah.
quite sure where she was supposed to be, but she's only been at a few practices, so I think she's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
But those are my impressions.
Yeah, I agree. I think, a lot of people online were a little bit outraged at the fact that they weren't seeing Malonga. And I mean, the big part of that is she came to training camp with a few days left. Like, she didn't really get much time to gel with the team. So she's kind of going through her own kind of personal training camp now, where I think the coaches are just trying to get her acclimated before she actually gets set out and set free. So, I mean, I wouldn't be too
Gonna be
concerned
fine.
about her minutes. Yeah, it'll be fine.
She's
Uh,
gonna be fine. It's people were overreacting for every game and every coach, after the
mhm.
first couple of games. I'm like, just give it a beat.
Exactly. People love to overreact at the first few games, but I mean, going back to, I guess, like individual players, um, we've talked about winning teams and all of that, but which player for you over the course of the entire opening weekend do you think had the best first game? Just like went out there and it looked like they hadn't even had an off season.
I really enjoyed Brittany Sykes
Yes.
from the Mystics. I mean, they talk about the rookies who are unafraid and unbothered and fun to watch, but I thought she was the glue, both ends of the floor, but especially at the end of the game on both ends of the floor, she was
Yes.
crucial. And I really enjoyed watching her play. I thought, and let me give kudos to Minnesota. Their offense was very fluid, almost exquisite, almost in midseason form. And I really, Courtney Williams, I thought, um, played really well. So those two, it's not
Hmm.
like people don't know who they are, but
Yeah.
we're talking about all these other people, and I thought those two really had a good weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I saw online that Courtney Williams had 0 turnovers as well over the weekend, which I mean is a great stat to have, especially in a league where defense is so heavily prioritized, like in the W. So yeah, I mean, you mentioned rookies a little bit. We've been kind of mentioning rookies throughout, Paige and whatever, but I want to get your perspective as a coach because I'm not a coach. I don't talk to coaches very often, but as a coach and you're watching as a fan and from home. And I mean, you can yell at your TV as much as you want, but what do you look for in rookies during their first few games in the W? Like, I know people immediately kind of want to, either judge them or say that there's an acclimation period. So, what do you look for in these rookies that are just starting out? And which rookie out of the weekend maybe stood out to you in terms of the things that you were looking for?
Yeah, I think first of all, off the court, when you come to this level, you got to learn be professional. Like be on time, be where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there.
Mhm.
Listen, learn, be a sponge. Those types of things. I think when you get on the court, just know where you're supposed to be. You know where you're supposed to be, know when you're supposed to be there, know what your role is, try to star in your role. But the biggest thing I think is just don't be defined by your mistakes because you're going to make mistakes. So
Yeah.
you have to have sort of a next play mentality, and hopefully your teammates are encouraging. But that's the big thing is it's a new level. So the speed of the game, the pace of the game, the physicality of the game, those are things that you have to get used to. Um, but I thought, like I said, I thought Area Finn and Citron were just unbothered. It was like whatever, you
Yeah.
know. I remember watching when Citron just got nailed in the preseason on a screen. You know,
Well,
she just got up and she just kept playing. It's all part of the game. And Area Finn's throwing people around the preseason, and um, but you also what I like about especially area fin is that you have to establish that you're not afraid and that you're not to be messed with now because you're a
Mhm.
rookie, you know, going to be hard fouls or whatever. So I think that's a big part of it. Like I said, I thought Paige had a solid game. She obviously played better. People are going to say she played better the second game because she scored more points.
Mhm.
But in terms of her overall game, I thought she had solid, you know, a solid weekend. And you didn't see a whole lot of points or anything, but I do think that Sarah Ashley Barker is going to be once she figures it out. I'm a big fan of hers. Looked like she got a little bit more time in the second game, and
Yeah.
not necessarily scoring, but contributing. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think LA is a fun place for Barker to be just because she might get a little bit extra run just given how their roster is situated. And a lot of their young players are more in the front court. And yeah, I mean, I am one who has followed, Paige Becker's career and obviously looking at her on a WNBA court, especially like, we talk about the fast turnaround, but one thing it's good for is, we watched Paige Becker's like a month and a half, almost 2 months ago on a college court, and now so soon we're watching her on a WNBA court. So it's kind of fresh in your mind to see, how she's transitioning, what her differences are. But I just thought in her first preseason game, like the first time she stepped on the court, she kind of looked a little lost, which is completely understandable. She's with all of these new players. It's going really fast. The pace, like you said, is a lot. But in last night's game, I was watching, and she definitely looked a little bit more confident, a little bit more sure of herself. She was making a lot of really good reads. I mean, the ones that stick out to me, that shot that she shot over NECA and the double team, I thought was a really great move. She just kind of was able to create space for herself and shoot over a defender that was much taller than her. And then the other play that I saw where she kind of drew the double team off of a screen from Maddie Segrist and then was able to give the ball back to her, and Segrist was able to shoot the three. And just these little things that she's doing that I think because it's so early in the season for this new system are probably a little bit more of instinct for her than necessarily like, plans. And maybe because I'm not in that situation, I don't know what they're drawing up. Maybe that's different, but I was just more impressed as the games have gone on with how she's been able to very quickly adapt to just a lesson she's learning. Like you said, like they're gonna fail, they're gonna make mistakes, they're gonna get fouls, et cetera, et cetera. But Paige to me has always been someone who has learned really quickly. Like she's very coachable. She's very, she'll take the lessons, maybe watch the film, and then be able to immediately fix those problems. So I was really impressed with what I saw from her last night.
Yeah, and I think Paige is the type of kid. I say kid, young lady, who she just moved to the beat of her own drum. She's not
Mhm.
going to be driven by anything anybody says. She knows the work she puts in, and I think she'll be patient with herself, but she also has very high expectations of herself. But
Yeah.
I don't think that other people's expectations for her or of her are going to overwhelm her. I think she knows
Mhm.
it's going to take time, and certainly just looking at her, this weekend, she's going to have to put on some weight and get stronger. But that's going to have to wait until the off season. She has very high basketball IQ. Obviously, was well coached, so
Yeah.
I see her contributing on a consistent basis. Like I said, they've got to figure out, how to make it work with her and Enrique. And I think it's possible, but definitely got to make some changes.
Yeah, I agree. I do. I agree with you in the fact that it's possible and that it, will take a little bit of evolving. But, of course, people are going to immediately get online after losses like that. And
There's already somebody who said fired Chris Coclines. I'm like, really? Just first of all, you have no idea what you're watching,
Mhm,
and you could not do a better job. And he's
mhm.
forgotten more than you'll ever know about the game. And so, just
Yeah,
give
get
it,
them
give it a beat.
exactly. Yeah, I agree. I mean, and I really also loved what you said about, these rookies just having to show up and be professional. And, sitting there and thinking it's not that much different than when you graduate from college and you go to your first like real job. Like, this is their job. They got to show up just like we have to show up to our, like, maybe more normal sounding jobs. But at the end of the day, like, these players are so dedicated and they'll put in the work if, that's what they want and to do. And I do think, especially, we're getting to this point where everybody's saying, oh, like, the league is expanding, there's going to be more spots. But if this preseason showed us anything, it's that, there still isn't enough spots. And so these players that have made it, I think maybe that gave them a little kick to be like, okay, like, I got to focus, I got to be unbothered, I got to show up every day, do my job, listen, be coachable. And so I do think what this year, like, I mean, we've been saying this for the past few years, but the rookie class is just so strong and so it's going to be so fun to watch and kind of make up our all rookie predictions and our rookie of the year race, because I don't think it's a one person race. Like, I don't think Paige Beckers is high and above anybody for rookie of the year.
No, and I don't make that decision until
Yeah.
I see some more games. Like I thought, the Mystics had a great weekend,
Mhm.
and now people are having them, winning the championship, and I'm like, slow
Mm,
your
slow down.
roll. Let's get halfway into the season, and obviously we are giving our opinion in terms of who, what, when, and where. But
Mhm.
you gotta let the season develop. You gotta have some patience and let these teams fix what didn't go well these first couple of games, and then see if they can sustain that.
Yeah.
That's a big thing is can you sustain these good games that you've had this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, the first week to even into like the third week, it's really hard to judge. I mean, the standings aren't accurate because people have played an uneven amount of games. They haven't really faced all of the competition yet. I feel like once every team has kind of faced every other team, like once we get to the point where we're at, 15, 20 games into the season for these teams, I think is where we can start making some of these like big season long, wide scale thoughts and assessments. But it's really interesting. I mean, the one thing that we can kind of agree on is that there's like a tier of teams up here that are what we call like championship contenders, like teams like New York, Vegas, Minnesota, Indiana, the ones that were like, okay, like, you're on track to probably be in the deep rounds of the playoffs. But are there any teams to you that you think could kind of like sneak up there and take one of those spots in that like first tier, quote unquote?
I'm not so sure about the first tier, but I
Yeah.
think really competing for just below the top spot, just below that. You
Yeah.
mentioned, Indiana. I forget the other two teams you mentioned, but we talked about Seattle. But the Mercury, I think this weekend, I won't say they surprised me, but I was just very curious about them.
Yeah.
And obviously with Sabali and the Swiss Army knife, they have an Alyssa Thomas. They both played really well.
Yeah.
Um, but the question for me for them is obviously you didn't have Copper, you didn't have Natasha Mack.
Yep.
Those teams that you're talking about at that mid level have very short rotations, and the question
Mhm.
is, can you get through an entire season healthy with those short rotations and them getting like a lot of minutes because
Mhm.
they don't have the bench that like the Liberty have. They don't have. I think the Lynx, they have a good bench. So the rest of the teams, like, can you sustain that whatever it is you're doing playing well with only seven, maybe eight players playing for 44 games? And it takes a little bit of luck to be healthy, right? But
Yeah.
are you conditioned enough, to put up the numbers? In Mercury's case, that Alyssa Thomas and Sachi Sabali, can you do that every night? Once we've had a few games and people start the game plan for you, is there anybody else that's going to take some of that pressure off me and make these teams pay for the adjustments that they make? Um, and then things are going to change when these teams that have injured players they come back. LA is
Mhm.
going to have Cameron Brink come back. Like I
Yeah.
said, with the Mercury, you're going to have Copper and Natasha Mack come back. There are teams with significant players who are significant contributors, I should say, that don't have them right now that are going to have them in, let's say, a month. So
Mhm.
hard to tell.
Yeah, it is really hard to tell. And, we're talking about players recovering and coming back from injury. And the one that really comes up to mind is Brianna Stewart. Like, she just had, a smallish procedure done in March. And I think that Liberty game kind of proved that she had been injured when you think about her play last year, when you think about her play in Unrivaled. And as the season goes on, hopefully she just keeps getting healthier and healthier. And that can be so dangerous. But you also think about players like Kalia Copper, who just had the same procedure done now. And, it's like a almost 2 month wait until we're going to be able to see her back on the court. And, I say like 2 months until, she's back and conditioned and like playing to the level. So, I mean, it's hard to manage that in terms of injuries, especially on these rosters that are only like 11, 12 players deep at most. So it's interesting. I think we talk about on paper who's the best team, but you also have to think on as the season goes on, like who can weather the ups and downs that come with a long WNBA season, and it's just getting longer. So, I mean, that's something that's going to be more prevalent.
Yeah, and I think Brianna Stewart's a perfect example of why you need a good bench and
Hmm.
four or five players that can come in and give you some rest where you're not right now being dependent on to win games so that she can
Yeah,
work her way back into being in shape and she's in there long enough to get a rhythm with the offense and then you get her some rest. So
yeah.
you always have to be a little bit lucky. If you're going to win a championship, your people have to stay healthy, and you have to peak at the right time.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard, and especially there's so many teams now that are building their rosters to kind of beat these other big teams. I think about Minnesota, how they've kind of leveled up trying to, give themselves a little bit more depth because in the end, like New York is like we've been saying this whole time has that depth. And so, you know, they've been kind of leveling up in that way too. And so it's hard to go up against these huge, like, I mean, the whole super team thing has been going on the last few years. But when you think about it, like these teams just have like a first line, a second line, they can switch up and, do all these different lineups. They have incredible coaches. Like I think about, Sandy Brondello and Cheryl Reeve and Becky Hammond and these coaches that are just so good at making adjustments no matter who's on the court and how many minutes restrictions you have and being able to weather those storms. So it's so much more about the entire team picture as it is, about the big three or the MVP of the team or stuff like that.
Yeah, and I mean, those three coaches that you mentioned are fabulous, very high basketball IQ. But at some point, sometimes it's just a hunch or a guessing game, and you hope you get lucky.
Yeah.
You look at Vegas, like what changes they're going to make. Like I don't remember seeing Aaliyah Nye play at all, and she's a great shooter. Can
Hmm.
she play more? Because she's a pretty good defender too. I mean,
Hmm.
you don't know until you play the game, and then you go and you watch film, and then you and your staff. That's why you're paid to to figure those kinds of things out.
Yeah, and it's still early. I think we're in this phase right now where coaches are still just like testing things out and getting, these rookies are getting their sea legs, I guess you could call them, or things like that. Where I think people are so quick to judge, like we've been saying, but again, it's a long season. You gotta figure stuff out, and then, like you said, peak at the right time. Which now's not the time to peak. Like you shouldn't be too too worried about winning right now. You need to be peaking later. Like now's the time to kind of suck.
Yeah, I mean, it takes the timing and rhythm, those and chemistry, those things take time, and you only had what maybe 2 weeks of um, training camp, and then
Yeah,
people are in and out. And then the other thing too is, what are these players going to do? Teams going to do when the players leave for the Eurobasket tournament? Like that's a
yeah,
whole
exactly.
nother set of adjustments of
Yep.
one of the reasons why you need to be playing a lot of people now to see who's going to be able to contribute. Not everybody's going to go, but
Yep.
for the teams who are going to lose significant players, who in that rotation is going to be able to take their place and hold it down till they get back?
Exactly, yeah, and I mean, with the surge of European players coming over, which I mean, as someone who's international, I just love because you kind of mix up the different styles of basketball kind of that are going on globally, but you also have these European players who are really, really dedicated to their international teams and aren't going to hesitate about going over, despite the fact that we've seen a few, the Gabby Williams and a few of those players. I think Carla Late was another one who decided that she wasn't going to go and play for France for Eurobasket. But teams will see a lot of players decide to go over because that's just the priority for them is their international teams. So you're right. Like it's going to come in June where there's going to be a lot of hardship contracts signed. There's going to be a lot of new players kind of coming into these camps. And you're going to see a lot of players that maybe got cut in those last waves, maybe make a resurgence as they go through kind of like the hardship injury rotation. So yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting season with so many people being in and out, not just for injuries, but because of these different factors.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, let's wrap it up here just because, we've gotten to a lot of topics and it's been so fun to talk to you and get like your coach's perspective as someone who, isn't around that very much. Journalist stuck in the media with all of these other writers, which is great, but it's nice to get that kind of like from the bench perspective. So, I mean, we'll be back talking soon, of course. And, for our listeners watching, make sure to subscribe to Her Hoop Stats so that you can get our daily podcast Monday to Friday into your inbox. And make sure to check out herhoopstats.com to get all of your updated stats on the WNBA season, as well as our Her Hoop Stats newsletter, which you can subscribe to, and it comes right into your email inbox every single day. So for the podcast today, thank you so much, Helen, for being able to come on here and talk hoops with me. I'm excited to talk all season long with you, and for everyone else, thank you so much for listening.